Hello, viewers, and welcome to what I hope will be the first of many long form videos on this channel where we can talk about Manchester United, soccer, Formula One. But today in particular, I wanted to connect with you guys. I wanted to make this video kind of discussing a few issues, not issues, but a few news stories that I've seen recently about Manchester United. And let me know down in the comments what you guys think about the topics that we're going to be talking about today. Do you guys agree with them, with some of them? Do you guys disagree with some of them? But I guess without further ado, let's actually just, get into the topics, right? And the first topic I wanted to discuss was actually a two-part topic, right? And I'm going to call it my Ruben Amorim dilemma. Now, the first part of the topic is what Ruben Amorim himself has said in recent interviews and what most people would say is probably what's going to happen, right? Sir Jim Radcliffe says that Ruben Amorim is the long-term solution, right? He hopes that Sir Jim Radcliffe or that Ruben Amorim will become like the man to bring Manchester United back, and I completely agree with that, right? I think the way he plays, it's innovative, right? I think it's definitely a style that I would, if implemented correctly at Manchester United, it would cause for a lot of, I guess, exciting play, right? And that's really what I want to like focus in at United, right? I don't just want us to win, right? I want us to win, but I want us to do it in style, right? Like, sure, anybody could just buy a bunch of center backs, right? And like the best center backs in the world and just park the bus like a Diego Simeone system, right? And maybe win a title, right? But I want to have that excitement. I want to be the team that scores goals. I want to do this, right? And I think Ruben Amorim is the man for that. However, we have interviews where Ruben Amorim is saying he won't have time at Manchester United, and I completely agree with him. I know Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the board and United as a club, they're saying, "Oh no, Ruben's the guy." Then why is he one on such a short contract? Because if I'm not mistaken, he only has this summer transfer window, and I think till the end of next season, right? Which I think causes a few different problems, right? Like, what if we try to build a team around Ruben Amorim, but you don't extend his contract, right? We've bought players for a Ruben Amorim system that's so unique, and then we just get rid of him. That would be a mistake, in my opinion. But I think the more issue or the problem that I have is the press will know that Ruben Amorim's contract is up in a little bit, right? So the pressure that going into next season he'll have to win, but not only to win, but to win convincingly and to, I guess, put us up there to where realistically Manchester United should be, right? It'll be immense. It'll be like he'll have the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I'm sure he thinks he could thrive under that, and I'm sure if you're a top level manager, if you're a top level player, you need to be able to thrive under the pressure, right? Because there's pressure no matter what. But we've seen managers crumble at United under pressure. We've seen Jose Mourinho sacked before Christmas and under that pressure cooker season after he got second and now he was eighth. We've seen Ten Hag have a good season and then the pressure just went up because everybody expected more and then he got sacked by Christmas. We've seen Ole Gunnar Solskjaer fix the club in the sense in terms of he got the club playing good again and he was given a season, and then after that season the expectation was just way too high and the pressure was just too quick, and we've seen, in my opinion, three, but I think even Van Gaal to an extent, managers just crumble under the pressure at Manchester United. And I think Ruben Amorim is privy to the fact that he won't have time at Manchester United, despite what the managers say, despite, or not the manager, but despite what the ownership says, despite what the press are saying. And I don't really trust the press at all because they turned on Ten Hag before he even came in to the club, right? So I don't really trust the press, but I digress. The club may claim that Ruben Amorim is a long-term solution, but even he knows he's not. He's only the long-term solution as long as he shows progress and he can win with the team, right? And for that reason, my dilemma with Ruben Amorim is, right, he plays such a unique system, right? It's not like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer played a 4-3-3, and when Ten Hag came in, yeah, he didn't have his players right away, but the players were accustomed to playing a 4-3-3, right? Ten Hag left, played a 4-3-3. Randy played a 4-3. Basically, all these players have known as 4-3-3s, 4-2-3-1s, right? And then Ruben Amorim comes in and he's changing it to a 3-5-2-1, right? And to myself, I'm thinking, okay, completely fine with a new manager coming in, implementing his system, and I think the system is great. But my dilemma is he's on a short contract, and he knows that he's not going to be afforded time at the club, which I think is wrong. I think by having such a unique manager with a unique playing style, we need to give him more than a year and a half. We need to give him I, this is the one manager that I would say, regardless of results next season, he cannot be tarnished by his results this season, right? Obviously, we're going to probably have the worst points finish of a Premier League season for Manchester United, right? And it is what it is. We're just going to have to live with it. We can't change it now. The season's almost done. It is what it is. Ruben Amorim cannot go into next season and be blamed for this season. This season was in part due to a poor summer transfer window, in the sense of we got the players that we need, but we got them too late. They didn't have a preseason, and they weren't. Ten Hag wasn't able to hit the ground running. Right, Ruben Amorim cannot be held accountable for this current Manchester United season. The only thing I see next season, though, is that because of where United finished this season, because of the performances, Ruben Amorim will enter next season. Not even play next season like half of it without having pressure. He'll enter next season with an immense level of pressure on him, right? And like I said, because he has such a unique system, this is the one manager that I think, despite results, we have to give at minimum 3 full seasons, not this season and then 2 more. I mean, 3 full seasons, because he needs to get his players in. Because I'll talk about it later in the show, but Alejandro Garnacho, issues with Alejandro Garnacho between Ruben Amorim and him, and fitting him into the system. Kobe Mainu, great player, great potential player, youth, but doesn't really fit into the system. Andre Onana, that's a whole different topic that we've talked about in the shorts and the TikToks that I've made. He needs to buy his own player. Like, he needs to basically overhaul the team and only keep the players that can fit his system. And that won't happen at Manchester United in one summer transfer window. We've seen people report that we don't have money. People report that it's going to be a sell to buy summer. People are reporting that, oh, we're going to do swap deals. So nobody really knows what is going on at United in terms of transfers. But one thing is for certain, we're not going to be the club that's going to just go out and buy that guy, buy that guy, buy that guy. Like, we're linked to Cunha, we're linked to Eze today, I saw, we're linked to Victor Osimhen. We are not the club right now that's going to go buy him, all 3 of them. It's not, even though that's what we should be doing, because I think all 3 of those players would be great additions to a Ruben Amorim system. We won't do that. At least in my personal opinion, from everything that I've seen so far, it's not going to happen. So, what is my Ruben Amorim dilemma, right? He knows he is under a lot of pressure, so he'll try to throw the kitchen sink to keep the job, because I feel that Ruben Amorim in his mind knows that if he's afforded time and if he can win his time at Manchester United, he can turn us into a top level team again, challenging for Premier Leagues, winning Champions Leagues. I think Ruben Amorim is the guy to do it. But I think that the quickness at which he has to do it is going to really put too much pressure on him, and it's going to force him to make mistakes, force him to make decisions where, and this is something that I completely don't want to see, is Ruben Amorim change his system to fit the players that we have. I think, like I said, we need to buy Ruben a squad that can fit his system. That's why when we're linked to players like Gyökeres, which I don't, again, it's like a Victor Osimhen, right? Really expensive, experienced striker, which we do need an experienced striker, but he's super expensive. We're probably not going to get him. But that's the type of players that Manchester United need to get. And I've made TikToks before saying we don't need another expensive goalie. We don't need another expensive striker. That doesn't mean we don't need quality. And I'm not saying we don't need quality. My dream signing this summer transfer window for Manchester United, and it's not going to happen. It's a pipe dream, right? But I think Robert Lewandowski, coming at his age, another year, maybe 2 years at Manchester United, he still has the quality to play at a top level team. Barcelona may be looking to cash in on him because of his age. I'm not sure. But Robert Lewandowski to, one, teach Rasmus Højlund how to play that position, teach Joshua Zirkzee, although I have my opinions on Joshua Zirkzee being more of a shadow striker cam role, but it is what it is. But teach Rasmus Højlund, teach an Obi Martin, right, to really take control and be the experienced striker that we need. I really think we need that type of player, right? I don't think Robert Lewandowski is for sale, but we need that type of player. Also, likewise, having that experience, it'll help players like Garnacho or whoever the wingers will be next season, right? Because we've seen the issue with Garnacho, at least in the Nottingham Forest game, right? He's too in his head. He's too egotistical. He's not playing for the team. And we could segue into that topic, but I want to finish on the Ruben Amorim stuff for now. The dilemma that I have is that Ruben is in such an awkward position because he needs certain players that fit the system, but are also experienced enough to really build a team around the youth players, because we can't just throw in 8 youth players into a first team. They're not going to know what to do. We notice, we've seen this happen this season. Even though our youth players are talented and we have talent in the team and potential in the team, they're inexperienced. They don't know how to deal with a team that knows how to press extremely well. They don't know how to deal with a team that knows how to defend really well. Like in a low ball, the most recent example of Nottingham Forest game, right? They don't know how to deal with that, and we need experienced players around them, like a spine of the team of experienced players, and then we can start filling in and incorporating youth more effectively. So my Ruben Amorim dilemma is, right, if we are to actually commit to this manager, it has to be a 3-year minimum commitment despite results. We can come back in 3 years and say we wasted 3 years, and in my opinion, it will be sad because we will not have won anything, but at least we gave the manager a genuine opportunity to succeed, right? This can't, because if we go through 2-3 summer transfer windows or 2 summer transfer windows and a January transfer window with Ruben Amorim, he buys all these players for his system, right? Say we bring in I'm not even sure, Nagelsmann, right? He plays a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. It's really interchangeable, right? So then the players will have to adapt to his system. And normally I'd say, okay, well, Ten Hag to Nagelsmann, the system, the shape is kind of the same, the roles are similar, but Ruben Amorim to a Nagelsmann, it's almost like it's a heads and tails on a penny, right? It's completely opposite, right? So that's my Ruben Amorim dilemma, right? We need to actually give him time, which unfortunately I don't think he will have time, and even he knows it himself. And another issue that I have with Ruben Amorim, which I don't think is going to be an issue going forward, but it's the international breaks. We saw before the March international break, we were actually starting to get some cohesive play, some cohesive attacking play, especially like the team was gelling finally before the March international break. And then we come back after it, and like I said in the shorts that I made, incoherent, toothless. Just the team didn't gel, and that could come down to individual players, like we've talked about Garnacho having a stinker of a game, realistically. But it's one of those situations where, okay, you can't really blame the players also, because a lot of these players will go play for their international teams, and they'll play in a 4-2-3-1, or they'll play in a 4-3-3, which they've done their whole careers, and they're still not adjusted to the Ruben Amorim system. So we need a my thing is we need to get the transfers in for Ruben Amorim before preseason, and we need to have the entire squad available that we're going to start next season with for preseason, because Ruben Amorim is going to need at least, I'd say, 2 months of just pure working on tactics and shape and system principles before players could go out and play for their international team, play a whole different system, come back, and then be completely fine to play for Manchester United, right? And I guess that's really the crux of the Ruben Amorim dilemma that I have, right? He needs time because the system is so unique, and he needs just time, like players. He needs his players, which I don't think he'll be afforded time, and he won't be afforded the players that he actually wants, because we've seen Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the board I mentioned started looking at young players. Like, don't get me wrong, we're leaning to Liam Delap, right? Good player. I'm not going to say great player. Good player in the Prem currently. Probably going to get relegated with Ipswich. He's not the profile of striker that we need this summer, right? If, let's say, next summer hypothetically, we have a Gyökeres, right? And then we sign a Liam Delap, and we sell, what's his name? Rasmus Højlund, right? Then maybe, okay, I'd understand it, because we sell potential and we bring in potential, but we have an experienced striker to either work with the potential or guide the potential. You know what I'm saying? So a Liam Delap, a young players currently I don't think we should be looking at them, not because I don't think they're good enough, and I don't think we shouldn't sign youth players. I'm all for signing young players that will grow with the team, but we really need to focus on building the spine and the experience of the team. So, I mean, that's why players like Lenny Yoro are doing fantastic when they were able to play, because they have a Mazarawi, they have a Delit, they have a Maguire, although I have my concerns with Maguire, but they have those experienced players that can get them through games. They can work around the youth players, right? But moving on, speaking of Maguire, I've seen recently, admins and people on X or Twitter, whatever you still want to call it, talking about Maguire as a striker. Now, I want to just quickly brush over this topic, right? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What are we? Maguire got placed as a striker against Nottingham Forest because we couldn't break down the low block. So we resorted to just crossing the ball. And obviously, a center back is going to be good at heading the ball because that's a large part of their job, defending when crosses come in, when corners come in. It's what they do, right? That's what center backs do. So obviously, if we're just throwing the kitchen sink at a team and Maguire gets put up top, it's to win headers, and he did that. But to say to play him as a striker because of his movement, because of his heading ability, I'm sorry. Maguire's slow. That's not negotiable. It's not like Maguire's suddenly going to become Kylian Mbappe in pace. So what are we going to do when we play a team that plays a high line and presses high? Is Maguire going to be able to run the channels against a Virgil van Dijk? Is Maguire going to be able to run the channels against a Gabriel as a striker? And even then, is Maguire going to even be good at hold-up play? Like, if we pass him the ball, is he going to be like a Joshua Xerxes where he can actually hold the ball up and play in a winger, play in a Garnacho, play in an Ahmad? It's ridiculous the amount of people that I've seen, at least in my opinion, that want to see Harry Maguire as a striker. I actually said it. Okay, he's a center back. He's a utility player that we can throw up top if we're throwing the kitchen sink at a team. And that's all I'm going to say about that. There's no need to push this agenda that we're going to start playing Maguire as a striker. Absolute nonsense. But speaking of strikers, Victor Osimhen. And we keep getting linked to Victor Osimhen. And I'd be ecstatic if we actually did sign Osimhen because he's A, experienced, B, quality, and C, he has the traits of a Ruben Amorim striker. He has the traits of a Gyökeres, the guy that Ruben Amorim created at Sporting. But I don't think we will sign him because he's too expensive. Napoli will want a transfer fee for him. Or what else I'm hearing is a Garnacho swap deal with Napoli for Victor Osimhen. Now, that presents an interesting question, right? If we swap Garnacho for Victor Osimhen, I think Garnacho would be open to it because I think Garnacho has checked out. We tried to sell him in January. He didn't want to go. Garnacho is most likely going to leave, which I want to be upset about. I have my opinions on Garnacho, which I'll get into later, but I'd be upset to see Garnacho leave. It won't work, though, financially, because Garnacho is a homegrown player, so technically on the books, like on the tax forms for Manchester United at the end of a financial year, and I'm somewhat qualified to speak on this. I went to business school. I did a lot of tax. I have a rudimentary understanding of tax and book writing and bookkeeping. However, from my understanding, Garnacho is obviously a homegrown player coming from the academy. So him being swapped for Victor Osimhen would put us in a worse position financially because he has no... Manchester basically tried to sell him so they could write off on their financial year when it ends in June that they made this much money and that they're complying with FFP rules. So if we swap him, we get nothing. And we probably will have to pay extra to Napoli for an Osimhen swap because I don't think it'll be a straight Victor Osimhen for Garnacho swap. It'll be a Victor Osimhen for Garnacho swap plus some money going from Manchester United to Napoli. But that being said, if reports are not to be believed, and we do have money to spend in the summer, this has all just been a double bluff or a poker face play. Victor Osimhen would be the striker that I would go for. Right now, he's not as experienced as I'd like. Don't get me wrong, 27 years old now, or going to be 27. Definitely a lot of experience. Serie A, now playing at Galatasaray, been good in the Champions League multiple years in a row. He is the striker that Manchester will buy. If they do buy him, that'll be here for 5 years, 6 years. It'll probably be his last big contract, and he'll be here for 5-6 years, in my opinion. Which I'd be ecstatic with. And I'd also be ecstatic because by the time he's ready to, be phased out of the team or maybe take a bench role, Erasmus Højlund and Obi Martin, Joshua Xerxes, if he does play as a striker, will be ready to move up into that head striker at Manchester United role, I think, in my opinion. They'll be coming into their prime, at least at that point. So my thoughts on this, right? Would love Victor Osimhen at the club. Is it going to happen? Most likely not, because I don't think we'll swap Garnacho for Victor Osimhen, and I don't think we have the money to buy a Victor Osimhen outright. But let me know. This is where I want to get involved. Like, would you guys swap them? Although, be realistic. Like, do you think that swap would happen? And B, would you sell an Alejandro Garnacho to fund a Victor Osimhen transfer? And personally, it's tough because I've been on record saying that, and I personally really like Alejandro Garnacho as a player at Manchester United. I think recently he's had his era of being egotistical and not really playing for the team, which we'll get into right now, I guess. Actually, we'll get into that right now. So the Nottingham Forest game really highlighted for me the major flaw with Alejandro Garnacho, right? And it's the fact that he's so egotistical, and I think when he came through under a Ten Hag system where he was basically the next big thing, he was going to become the guy at Manchester United, right? I think that just went to his head. And now I feel like he thinks, or maybe he feels that though he has to carry the attack, which is an immense amount of pressure for him at his age. Also, I just think he's very limited in his playmaking ability, right? And as a winger or as that winger midfielder cam number 10 role in a Ruben Amorim system, you have to be creative. You have to be able to pass. You have to be basically a Lionel Messi-esque player that you can score but also assist, right? And I don't see, well, one, nobody's going to be on Lionel Messi's level. Nobody's going to be on Ronaldo's level either. But that archetype of player, right? And I just don't see Alejandro Garnacho being that archetype of player. And it's, for me, it's very sad because I think if we gave him time, he could be molded into that type of player that Ruben Amorim is looking to have in that position. But I just don't think he's going to be afforded time. I think Manchester United are really in the hole, right, when it comes to money, especially this coming transfer window. And I think they'll look to offload academy players. We've seen the Kobe Minu links to being moved out of the club. We've seen the Garnacho links in January trying to sell up. Now apparently we're going to swap them with Victor Osimhen. It's sad to see academy graduates and academy players that have potential, like academy players that genuinely have potential and have shown glimpses of their ability, being moved on or planning to be moved on just so we can fund the club, right? And that's so sad to me that that's the state of the club that I love, that the club that I support, right? Because I remember I grew up watching this team, so I remember the days where we got Rooney and we got Nani and we got everything that we wanted, right? And we didn't have to sell our youth players to fund those transfers. And it really is sad, right? But back to Garnacho, right? If he has to stay at Manchester United, a lot of improvement needs to be done in terms of his passing and his looking up and actually seeing the play, right? Because, and I think that will, if he does stay and we get an experienced striker, I think that'll be a thing. Because if we get a Victor Osimhen, if we get a Gyökeres, if we get a Lewandowski archetype, right, striker, right? He'll be able, like, if Garnacho doesn't pass him and he's open, he'll go to Garnacho and be like, pass me the ball. What are you doing? I'm here to score. I'm here to be the striker for this team. Pass me the ball. Whereas like Erasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee at their current age and at their current status in the team, they can't do that. Right? They can't go to Garnacho and be like, pass me the ball. I need the ball. Me, you know? Because they don't have that level of, I guess, pedigree. Whereas a Victor Osimhen, a Gyökeres, those type of players, they've been there, they've done that. Now they're coming to United to prove something, to prove that they can do it in the Prem, to prove that they can win in the Prem, right? So they'll go to these players, they'll go to the Amads, they'll go to the Garnachos, they'll go to the young players, not only mentor them and help them get better, but also be like, give me the ball. You need to stop with this lollygagging. I don't even know why I said lollygagging, but you need to stop with this shooting from 40 yards, trying to get a golazo from just spectacular for the Instagram, TikTok reels, right? And I think that's why an experienced striker is more important than a big name striker. But if we could get both, I'd be ecstatic. But that's my, I guess, take on Garnacho, right? Now, if you ask me right now, would I sell Alejandro Garnacho? No. Because I think he can be molded into that type of player that we need. And I think that we're selling him not for the right reasons if we do sell him or if we do swap him, right? We're selling him because the club is financially broke. right? We don't have money. There needs to be sell to buy. There needs to be all this. If we were to sell Garnacho because he's super valuable and he wants to move on, and we could just bring in like his replacement, like a solid replacement, right? I'd be more okay with it, but at the same time, I wouldn't be ecstatic with it. But would I sell Garnacho right now? No. But I understand why some people would. Let me know down in the comments. Would you currently, right now, sell Alejandro Garnacho to fund other transfers? Because I understand the argument, right? He this season atrocious. He hasn't shown any glimpses of that ability, but I understand it. Now, I guess the final topic, right, that I guess I've alluded to this whole show is the fact that we're linked to a lot of youth players. And I think the one that epitomes the transfer policy under Ineos this summer transfer window will be a Liam Delap, right? If we sign Liam Delap, it's because he's young, English, and has potential. But it's not because he's what we need. I've said this throughout this show. We need an experienced striker. We need a Lewandowski archetype. We need a Gyökeres. We need a Victor Osimhen. We need to find that player on the cheap side, or on the side where we can afford to buy him and players that will fill in other parts of the team that we desperately need. And I'll do a video later on where I talk about what an ideal transfer window might look like, or what I see as the potential problem areas for the transfer. But we need experience, right? We've seen how Lenny Yoro has progressed. We've seen how Hayden has done decently because he has the experience around him. He has the Maguires, he has the Delicts, he has the Mazraouis around him, right? We've seen Mainu do okay this season because he has the Casemiros, although Casemiro is a different topic for a different story or a different day, but he has a Bruno Fernandes, he has the Ugartes around him. And in the strike force and the attack, we have nobody like that. We have no experience there. And as a transfer policy, and I'll kind of wrap this up in a nice little bow shortly here. I don't want to drag the show out too long, but it really is just I'm all for signing youth players or young players with high potentials that can be bench players that we start integrating. Sorry about that. Camera died. But as I was saying, we need to sign those type of players to build a spine that we can then incorporate the younger players that we will buy, the younger players coming in from the academy into the team, right? Because I see a future where it's Lenny Yoro and Aiden Heaven and Delit at the back. And Delit will be older, and Lenny Yoro and Aiden Heaven will obviously go as well, but they'll have been molded into that position to become the senior players. And then we bring in more young center backs, right? And right now we just don't have that in the rest of the field. I think our defense is probably the strongest area of our team, right? I guess that's my take on the transfer policy that apparently Ineos want to follow this summer transfer, which it goes back to that Ruben Amorim dilemma, right? Ruben Amorim wants these players because he knows that these players will afford him what he needs. He needs this style of player because he knows that's what he needs there. We shouldn't exclude players because instead of 25, they're 26 or 27. We should only exclude players if their ability is wrong, or wrong, not wrong, but like not up to par with what we need. So we could discuss some more. Let me know down in the comments. Do you guys agree with just another summer transfer window where Ineos, for example, just buy a bunch of youth players or younger players that have potential to become really good first team players, and we become next season like a Brighton, or well, if we were Brighton, that would be pretty good right now. But you know what I'm saying. We become a team where we're reliant on youth, right? Or would you like a transfer window more focused on a balance of experience and youth? Because realistically, we are going to miss out on, if we buy a Victor Osimhen, right? Hypothetically, we're going to miss out on a Liam Delap. We're going to miss out on other players of that like age bracket that may have the potential, may or may not have the potential at the end of the day. But let me know, guys, down in the comments below. Do you guys agree that the transfer window is going to be the wrong type of transfer window? Mainly, I also want to know, just let me know, guys. Do you guys agree? And I'll see you guys in the next show, which we'll figure out what we're going to talk. We're probably going to do a watch along for the Manchester Derby. We'll see, though. I'll see you guys. Take care.